Take a look at some basic video editing inside Adobe Premiere Pro. First of all, we need to start with some assets. Now for this assignment, you're being asked to design with video using color, intensity, and rhythm or pacing. And we're just using a series of still images, and a great source for that is a website called pexels.com. So if you go there and register, these are free, royalty-free images that you can download and use in your various compositions. So I am going to do mine on the color red. You'll be doing yours on your favorite color. And I've selected a filter, just putting in the word red, and I've gone through these images and I've put them into a desktop folder called Images. Now, you may want to organize your projects just by creating an overall folder there for video, and I can put that inside my Images folder in there. And you could organize that video folder by creating other subfolders, one for audio, and create another one. Command-Shift-N, by the way, to create a new folder. And this one could be for exports. So when you finish your video, you need to export it in a particular format, and that might be a folder that you could save it in. So I've pre-organized everything. I've got all my images in there. You want to look to have between 6 and 10 images because your video's got to be in the range of 15 to 20 seconds long. So I've got my images. I launch Premiere Pro and I tell it I want to create a new project. And right off the top, we can browse the location of where we want our project to be saved, and we can browse. And I can look here on the desktop, and there's my video folder. So I can choose that folder as my location, and we're ready to go. So we click OK, and it opens up our editing suite. So here we have our source window where we can edit individual clips of video. This is our sequence window or program window where we can view our edited footage in our sequence. This in the bottom right hand corner is our timeline, and in the left here we've got a number of tabs that we can access things like our libraries, various effects, video markers, and so on. And I'm just going to close the ones that I don't want, and there we go, and close history. I don't even need the libraries panel here, and I'm just going to close that media browser as well so that I've just got the project tab and the effects tab. So you can see also up here we have different modalities for working. We have the assembly mode, which allows us to bring media elements together for inclusion in our sequence. Editing mode, where we're cutting things together here on a timeline and we're previewing individual clips or an edited sequence of clips. We have access to color timing for adjusting color from one reel to the next. You may have had slightly different lighting conditions or different filters that need correcting for. And then again, our effects menu, which governs audio effects, audio transitions, video effects, video transitions, and some other 3D components. This is for audio editing, and here we have access to graphics, and again, our libraries in the Creative Cloud. I'm not signed in yet, so it's just showing that there's nothing initialized at this point. So we want to be working in assembly mode, I'm back here in editing mode. You'll notice down here it says import media to start. So if we just double click that, find our media, which is right there, and import all of that, it brings then that entire folder into a bin. As a matter of fact, let me just do that a different way. I'm just going to clear that, double click, and this time we'll just bring them in this way. Holding down the Shift key, I select all of those images just so they're not sitting in a bin folder. They're all sitting open here. You can see the individual images. And now if we scroll down, and I don't have a blank area of the screen. If I had a blank area in my screen here, I could have double clicked on it or right clicked on it. I'm going to click the new here and choose new sequence. So this tells it that we want to start cutting together a number of clips of still images, audio, and video. I'm going to create this new sequence, and here we get to choose what the format for our sequence is going to be. And we're going to use 1080p, AVC HD, and 1080p at 24 frames a second. That's pretty standard. Gives you a 1920 by 1080 square pixels, a 16:9 aspect ratio, and it's HD video at roughly 23 frames per second and 48 kilohertz of audio. And that's plenty for what we need to do here. So we click OK. You notice it creates a sequence window. I should have named our sequence. I'll name it now. I'm going to call my sequence red. So I just named it down here. So our sequence is called red. You can see the sequence name up there in the sequence window. And now we need to start dragging in our assets and commence the video editing process. So I'm going to start out here. I've already given some thought to what it is I want to pull in here. And we're dealing with the color red, but we want to build that color in intensity. So I've got a fairly low intensity image right here. And you can see already that this image is much too large for the format that I've provided. This might be like a 4K image, and really we're working in a 2K video environment. So how do you scale that down? So right off the top, if we double click this clip, and then we go into Effect Controls, if we go into here under Scale, we can scale that video down. And you can see it. It's being letterboxed on the left and the right hand side by black. And we just want to scale it so it's properly cropped. And I just want to start with a kind of cold, alienated, frozen feeling here. We want the video to be 3 seconds long. Now this up here is called the playhead. And I could move that up to the 3-second marker. And down here gives us a kind of time scale. So if I crunch this down, it kind of magnifies the time scale for us here. So we want this first piece to be about 3 seconds long. If I hit the space bar, you'll notice that it plays out, and there it is at about 3 seconds. The best way to do it is to actually position it just by going here and choosing 0, 3. These two numbers here indicate seconds. These, of course, are minutes and hours on the far left, and these things represent frames. Now we're at 24 frames per second, so every time we get to 24, it starts to recount and resets itself back to 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on, and counts up. And once it's added in 24 frames, it increments this value right here by adding another second in. So we say we want to move the playhead to 3 seconds, and I hit return. It's now moved the playhead to the 3-second mark, and we can now adjust this. If I move my pointer here, I can just pull it back and adjust that still image to the 3-second duration. So that's our first image in. Let's just roll it back, and you can see there's our 3-second count, and then it goes to black. Next up, I want to bring in this picture of our femme fatale. She's pining away for love, And notice the image has got to be scaled down again, so we can take the scale factor here for that image. Go to Effects, scale the image down just so it's properly cropped. Again, we can reposition the image here as well. You can see that we can move it back and forth or up and down to get the appropriate cropping for that image. So that's scaling and repositioning of the image right here under Effect Controls, under the motion effects. So we want to cut this down, make it a little bit shorter. Now we're talking about not only changing the image with respect to color intensity, but we want to change the image with respect to its duration. We want to increase the rhythm or the speed at which these images are fed to the viewer. And this kind of creates an increase in pace. This helps to generate tension in the video. And we haven't even used music yet, which is very good at creating tension and tempo within a video. So here we go. We'll just scale it back to about the 1 second mark. So we can do it this way, or we can just scrub it until we see ourselves at the 4 second mark. There we go. Another way of editing, rather than just scaling back here like I've shown, is to use the razor blade tool and to simply cut that, and then we can select and delete the unwanted portion of that image, and there we have it. It's down to 1 second. So there's 3 seconds. There we go. Oh, something's been lost in all of that. Somehow the scaling on this got changed to 0. That's odd. Okay. So there we go. Okay, so 3 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 1 second. And now we'll bring in our other images. We can stretch this out too. Maybe I'm going to make this about 1.5 seconds. So if I move the playhead 3 to 4 and 12, because remember 12 frames is a half second. So 4 and 12. There we go. I can trim the video there, or just simply drag it back like this. I'll bring in my next image in the sequence. Now remember, we want to get this in around 15 to 20 seconds. And she drinks this secret elixir. We'll scale it down again. Remember, we need to select it and then scale it down. And we can reposition it again with these controls if need be to get the proper cropping. And I'm just going to scale that back. This one's going to have a duration of around 1 second. So 4:12 to around 5:12. There we go. And bring another one in. She drinks the magic elixir. She decides to take a gamble. There we go. I want to scale that down a little bit, so I need to select it, scale it down. There we go. I like that. I like having the framing off center. It's more interesting. You remember composition, often you're using the rule of thirds. Putting something smack dab in the center kind of imparts a stasis on the image. It's kind of surrounded by neutral space, and in some ways it gets rid of the dynamism, or it undermines the power of the image. So I'm putting it on the far left third of the screen. horizontally, and vertically you can work with the same sort of thing. There's the bottom third. And there's the top third. I'm showing a bit of the letterboxing there, but that makes it a lot more interesting. So I'm using the rule of thirds. I'm always coming at the video as a designer, designing with color intensity, or we would call that value, and also using the rule of thirds for composition. And now we're introducing you to another variable or another element of design, and that's time. So here we're using time to increase the pacing. I'm just going to do this visually. I'm making it slightly smaller, which means it's less time, slightly smaller than the one previous to it. So she takes a gamble. She makes a phone call. Again, let's look at that. It's too big, so I'm going to select it. Use the scaling function to bring it down in size. There we go. I'm just going to turn it back here so it's a little bit shorter than the one before it, always increasing the tempo. By the way, if you hold the Shift key down, it'll snap to the very end of the timeline here. So as you're moving, holding the Shift key causes it to snap. She makes a phone call, and it ignites a fire, sparks something in a relationship. And I'm just going to scale that down, select it, scale it down. Again, I could use the offset here, take that down into the far right third. Again, scale it back in time, so it's very brief. It ignites. We've ignited a fire in some relationship with a mysterious other. And here we are. And we'll just let that hang a little bit longer as it concludes. So there we go, 3 seconds. I'm well below the 15-second mark here, so I could take a little bit more. You can always rehearse your timing. Take the playhead right back to the beginning, hit the space bar, let it play, see how it plays out. There you go. But what we'll do is we'll add in a title at the end. Again, I should probably scale that down. There's the mysterious individual. I like the power of him being in the center there at this time. It creates a strong focus. And we're letting this one be a little bit longer because it paces itself out. Again, I might want to exaggerate this, drag that to the 2-second mark. You can create a marquee around things, move them out of the way. It's very flexible. We'll make that about 2 seconds long. Move these out of the way. Make that slightly longer. And then create a very rapid progression. Just make that a little bit longer there. A little tiny bit longer there. And very short there. And then we hold for a slightly prolonged period of time on the final image. And then let's just take a look at that. And now we want to conclude. So I'm going to move the playhead all the way to the end there, hold the shift key down so it snaps, and then down here I can tell it, I'm just going to make this a little bit larger so I can see what's going on here, tell it that I want to create a new item, and in this case I want to create a new color mat. This provides me with a solid color background, and I got it set up to the same parameters, and I choose the color, and I'm just going to choose a slightly pinkish white, and I'm just going to call this pink background, and it just creates it there. It's a color mat, and at any point in time I can drag that color mat in there, and there's my pink background. And I'll keep that going right to the 15-second mark. So I'll move my playhead back to 15 seconds. There we go. And I'll just trim that back. Okay. And another thing that you can do is in deleting things, let's say you use the razor blade and you want to get rid of this piece right here, you can select that, and if you delete it, it kind of leaves a gap, which can be problematic because it creates jumps in your timeline. So you'll see as it cycles through, then it jumps, and there's a black gap in there. You need to fill that gap in, and the way you do it is control clicking on it and hit ripple delete, and it just closes in the area. Again, another way, use the razor blade, click on it, and then shift delete. Oh, sorry, it's option delete, I think. Yeah, option delete is another way of doing it. It just performs a ripple delete. So there we have it. We've got our pink background, and now I want to bring some text in. So if I go to the title tool, and here we go, we've got text here, and I'll just make a text box, kind of get it framed in the center. And if I look at my text specifications under Effects Controls, I can choose my font, I can choose the color. So for the fill, I'm going to choose a really deep red, intense red, and I'm just going to put in the word, oops, I'm just going to put in the text red. Red, there we go. I can select that again under Effects Controls. I can change my font. I'm going to use Arial Black for that. And again, I can change the sizing. And I can center it right here. And again, like everything else, I could scale and position things right here. So you can see I can alter the positioning of the word red. Again, not dead center, slightly elevated above that. And there we have it. I want this to display across the white background. So I've got to make sure that it starts here and it ends here, all at the 15-second mark. Let's preview the video. There we go. She's dreaming. She takes the magic elixir. She takes a gamble. She calls somebody. It sparks an interest in the mystery man. And there's the word red. You'll notice that in here it had a cross dissolve set up on it. That's all part of applying what we call video transitions. And we have these cross dissolves. As you can see there, we can apply them directly to something just by dragging them on to here like that. So that concludes our video. We now have to render it. We do that by going Command M or File, Export, Media. Now, in order for that to work, we've got to actually choose our sequence. This is our sequence right here. So if we select our sequence and we say File, Export, Media, this is one way in which we can do it. I'm just going to set the playhead all the way back. Another way in which to ensure that we've got all the media, I'm just going to shrink this down, is to select all the elements that are in your sequence that you want rendered. Or you do it this way. Command M, and now we can either queue it up and send it over to Adobe Media Encoder, which is something you would do if you had a very significant video workflow and you had to render many different video sequences. You'd probably use Adobe Encoder. However, we can just export directly from here. So let's take a look at what we're going to use. We're going to use H.264. That makes it compatible for web. And then we can set it up. I'm going to send mine to YouTube. So I can look at YouTube 1080 HD. It sets it up for that. And then I want to take a look at where it's going to output to. So where it says output name, if I click on there, I want to make sure that it's outputting to that video folder. Okay, so there it is on my desktop inside the video folder, and I want it specifically to go inside exports. So there, we'll hit save, and it's going to create for us an MP4. So I just click export, it starts encoding it. Creates my video, and now I can put that up on my portfolio site, or it's now ready for posting up to YouTube. I can put it up in YouTube, and then I can get an embed code and use that embed code to put it either in Behance or embed it into a storied portfolio that I might make using Spark Page from Adobe. So that's it. We'll catch up on other editing techniques later.